I give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Madam President, we are grateful to the Special Representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Algasim I, for the briefing on the work of MINUSMA, as well as on developments in the country. We welcome the participation of Madam Sandhya Touré, as well as the Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Mali, Mr. Abdoulaye Diop. We believe that the way for the Malians to surmount current challenges is only if there is internal political stability and security provided for within the country. The more territory is under the control of the state, the more effective counterterrorism efforts will be, and the better protected the people of the country will be. We see that the transitional authorities are intensely focused on gradually and consistently resolving the issues that have amassed. Restitution of constitutional order is, without a doubt, one of the priorities. We note the decision of the Malian government to establish a timeline for the transitional period for 24 months, beginning with 26 March of this year. This is a step which is an optimal compromise, which in our view should be earnestly considered by colleagues from the economic community. We advocate pursuit of dialogue between Bamako and ECOWAS. This would help to ensure the lifting of existing regional sanctions, which have been causing suffering both for the population of Mali and for the countries that have imposed these restrictions. We believe that the authorities and people of Mali should maintain control over issues related to the transitional period. Haste here and the hasty organization of elections under external pressure without accounting for the difficult security situation would result not in restitution of constitutional order, but rather in further destabilization. We support the commitment of Bamako to implement the 2015 Algiers Peace Agreement, which is the bedrock for achievement of a lasting peace and national harmony. Certain pauses in the implementation of the agreements, including in the implementation of the DDR program, are linked to addressing the top priority, which is ensuring security. We fully support the current Malian authorities in their view that security is the unconditional and top priority for the transitional period. Withdrawal of both the French military Barkhane contingent and the withdrawal of the European Takuba task force from Mali without agreement being reached with the Malians creates an additional threat to internal stability. The Malians' focus and intent on finding possible military technical support from other external players, including the Russian Federation, is fully understandable. This kind of cooperation is already yielding fruit. The Malian armed forces in late March carried out a successful military operation during which more than 200 Islamic fighters were neutralized in the center of the country. The northern and eastern parts of the country are consistently being liberated from these armed groups. We wish to recall that the Russian-Malian cooperation, including at the military level, has a long-standing history, as is the case with other African states. And from our we have not received any complaints whatsoever from our African partners on this. And in this connection, we note the West's pointedly negative response to strengthened Russian-Malian military cooperation. Here we see yet another manifestation of neo-colonialist approaches and double standards. Unscrupulous and vile insinuations have been unleashed regarding so-called massacres by the Malian armed forces with their complicity of Russian instructors against the civilians in Mura, as well as disinformation has been introduced about the mass graves near Gosi. Let us recall that Russia raised this issue at the Security Council, and there was a promise to provide us with evidence, but ultimately there was no coherent information other than blurred photographs which show virtually nothing. as well as a pair of social media posts. So that is all that they managed to provide for us. We support the investigation carried out by the Malians into all circumstances behind what transpired. In response to some remarks from our colleagues, I wish to reiterate the following, and we stated this on a number of occasions already. In Africa, including West Africa, there is a multitude of private military companies, so the market for the relevant services in the region has long been claimed by Western private military companies, many of whom, including according to media outlets, British mercenaries were involved in attempts to replace governments in other sordid affairs. However, many African states are reaching and agreeing on contracts with private military companies, and this is because they have the sovereign right to do so. We wish to reiterate something we state during each meeting. Any and all states have the right themselves to determine how they are to provide for their own security. And this is understandable because there is no certainty of somebody else dealing with this. Let us recall that in Mali there's a Sahel, irresponsible and a victim of a security of an intervention in Libya in 2011, which was not sanctioned by the Security Council, was completely unjustified. These actions were the reason behind the region becoming the target of the activities by terrorists and bandits. And this is something which not only we talk about, but the representatives of the Sahel themselves point to. However, why have countries in the Sahel found themselves to be so vulnerable? For example, in Mali, there was the largest African civilization, the heart of education, of trade. The reasons lie in the colonialist past, which unfortunately, even after the countries in the region gained independence, colonialism unfortunately has not vanished. It was supplanted by so-called domination through contracts, the main purpose of which is to retain the levers of political and economic control. As a result, most states did not have an opportunity to provide for security and to provide for dignified conditions of living on their territories. For the sake of justice, let us recall that after the West created a crisis in Libya, the international community tried to help the Sahel, but as to how effective this assistance was, that is in doubt. Foreign troops entered the region. There were high-profile statements about countering terrorism, and yet the situation further deteriorated and continues to unravel. What happened when Mali raised this issue, raised questions and doubts about this approach? It behooves us to note here that this kind of sentiment is gaining traction, becoming more popular in other regions as well. Sanctions were imposed, development assistance was cut off, human rights were violated, and there was slander in the Western press. And this is particularly unfortunate that neighbors are now being antagonized. Some are being put in better light than others. For some are combating terrorism correctly with the help of so-called democratic partners, and others, apparently, are too harsh, cooperating, with the Russian Federation. There's one response here. It is more important for the West to maintain its spheres of influence. That is more important for them than to meaningfully help Africans resolve their issues. We regret in this connection that in exerting pressure on the Malian side, foreign players have been leveraging multilateral structures for influence, including the Sahel Five. Unfortunately, as a result of internecine fighting, Bamako was compelled to take a decision to remove itself from it. But we, the Russian Federation, are firmly of the view that the main role for the maintenance of peace and security in the Sahel-Sahara region is to be played by the representatives of the region themselves. We advocate states in the region carrying out genuinely independent policies in addressing the relevant tasks on the basis of the principle of African solutions to African problems. We are confident that the result will be achieved if the African countries themselves engage in mutually respectful, through the restoration of trust, without pressure from abroad, find effective solutions to terrorism challenges. Madam President, to conclude, I wish to note that the Russian Federation supports the work of the United Nations Stabilization Mission in Mali. And we pay tribute to the United Nations Blue Helmets, who are operating under difficult conditions of asymmetric threats, particularly those peacekeepers who have paid the highest price. The situation in the country remains fluid. Many issues remain in flux. There is no certainty there. And in this connection, we do not deem it wise or timely or feasible to introduce any serious changes in MINUSMA's mandate, to burden the mission with new objectives, especially those which go beyond the principles of peacekeeping and cooperation with the host state. We support the proposal of the Secretary General to carry out an assessment of the modalities of MINUSMA's work over the period of 6 months, after which we could, where if necessary, consider certain adjustments. Under these difficult circumstances, we deem it necessary to pursue our effective support to the Malian authorities, while concurrently prompting them to engage in a balanced, calibrated policy in addressing the crises plaguing the country. At the same time, we would call upon all of our Security Council colleagues, with whom we stand ready to cooperate fully and meaningfully, to promptly normalize the situation in Mali, to achieve a lasting peace and stability throughout the entire Sahel-Sahara region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank the representative of Russian Federation for their statement.